Horror films in 1978 brought us a classic Roger Corman Jaws ripoff and perhaps the greatest zombie and slasher movies ever made. 1979 brings us multiple vampire classics, the seminal haunted house movie, and space horror done at its absolute finest. As we truck along with our year-by-year breakdown, we present to you the 10 best horror films of 1979. A title like The Driller Killer incites visions of a brutal power tool slash fest, but this film is far from the standard maniac on a killing spree fare. A somewhat divisive film amongst those who have seen it. The name, and the fact that it was banned in some countries, have given audiences the expectation of a graphically violent gore fest, probably not helped by the fact that the VHS cover showed a man being drilled in the forehead. However, The Driller Killer is more of a gritty New York underground art film than what one would call a slasher, but there are still some pretty gruesome death scenes, naturally. During an evening of babysitting, high school student Jill Johnson is terrorized by a caller who keeps asking if she's checked on the children lately. When she calls the police, they inform her that the calls are coming from inside the house. Dun dun dun. So, while these first 20 minutes of the film make for a throat-grabbing opening, our director decided not to stretch this sequence to feature length, unlike the 2006 remake. This left him with a conundrum of how to expand the story. The route he chose was controversial, and one that turned audience expectations on their heads, when the film all but jettisons popcorn chills for a downbeat character study in manhunt. Pretty great. Some call the movie a glorified slasher that never advances beyond a great first act, but that's not really giving the movie its just due.
Hello?
Why haven't you checked the children?
A group of young friends stranded at a secluded roadside museum are stalked by a masked assailant who uses his telekinetic powers to control the attraction's mannequins. Tourist Trap is the perfect example of a snapshot of the horror genre when it was in a transitional phase. The slasher movie was beginning to boom, while supernatural affair was waning. So here we have a film that covers both bases with a little bit of everything. It's a silly movie, but definitely an interesting one. What keeps it all from becoming high camp is the film's eerie atmosphere and unsettling childlike quality, which sucks the viewer into a nightmarish alternate reality with such plain-spoken innocence that we have no choice but to accept it at face value.
It almost looks like she could move. What's the matter? Feels like flesh.
A mad doctor tries psychoplasmic therapy on a raging woman soon to be a mother. Shedding the grindhouse skin of his early films for a cool clinical sheen, body horror master David Cronenberg, with The Brood, presents a bad dream that's guaranteed to generate recurrent nightmares. The horrors are simultaneously literal and allegorical, springing from a deep emotional well that transcends the bounds of conventional drama. This is Cronenberg's Kramer vs. Kramer, although that particular picture never featured dwarfish homicidal psychopaths amongst its methods for bridging irreconcilable differences. Werner Herzog's Nosferatu should be an object lesson in the art of the remake for a film culture rife with an irrepressible rage for the redo. Playing to the visual and narrative strengths of the original, down to cribbing many of its iconic compositions, Herzog still succeeds in imprinting the material with his own unique sensibility. The result is an earnest homage that also bears unmistakable traces of cinematic one-upmanship. The basic plot of the original film is followed with a few additions here and there. Count Dracula leaves his castle in Transylvania and sets sail for Wismar in search of new blood. Once there, he unleashes an army of rats that fan out across the town, spreading the plague. Strangers looking for a woman's father arrive at a tropical island where a doctor desperately searches for the cause and cure of a recent epidemic of the undead. Zombie 2, aka Zombie Flesh Eaters, was the film which revitalized
Lucio Fulci's
floundering career. It was the first film on his pathway to being dubbed the, quote, Godfather of Gore. It should be noted that George Romero's Dawn of the Dead was released in Europe under the title Zombie, and although Fulci's film is billed as Zombie 2, it is in no way related to Romero's series, being simply a marketing ploy, and an effective one at that. Tobe Hooper's TV movie adaptation of Stephen King's novel, despite the constraints inherent in any television production, is actually a very effective and creepy vampire film. Indeed, small screen restrictions require the bloodletting be kept to a minimum, but the filmmakers nevertheless managed to construct a first-rate chiller out of King's fertile source material. Salem's Lot is a masterful vampire flick barely aged that will keep you up at nights, and away from your windows during the midnight hours. You all know the story. Newlyweds move into a large house where a mass murder was committed, and unfortunately, the bad vibes are there to stay. Like The Exorcist and The Omen, the real baddie of the Amityville horror is Satan, who drove a boy to kill his parents and 4 siblings in cold blood, and whose wicked spirit, 1 year later, possessed his new occupant, George Lutz, and convinces him to do away with his new wife and her 3 annoying kids. The Amityville horror hasn't exactly aged gracefully, but it is still a plenty effective little slice of horror. It may feel a little tame by today's standards, but Amityville still presents an interesting take on the American dream of happy home ownership gone wrong. The film works because it has plenty of atmosphere, an able-bodied cast, and enough uneasy moments to make for multiple tense viewings. A teenage boy and his friends face off against a mysterious grave robber, known only as the Tall Man, who employs a lethal arsenal of unearthly weapons. Indeed, the Tall Man is really an alien that crushes the corpses he's acquired to dwarf size, dresses them in brown hooded cloaks, and sends at least some of them through an interdimensional gateway set up at the funeral parlor into his world to be slaves. You got all that? Yeah, it's Nutter Butters. A cinematic game changer for sure. Ridley Scott's Alien took a simple premise and shot for the stars. A ragtag crew of space miners, led by female hard-ass Ripley, gets an order to detour from its trip back home and stop on an uncharted planet from which a mysterious signal has been received. Once there, the Nostromo's crew members fall, one by one, to a variety of extraterrestrial threats, namely, a tall, lanky reptilian beast with no eyes and acid for blood. Alien proved that material derided as B-movie fodder could be handled with finesse and glossy production values, without diminishing the thrills or polishing over the hard-edge horror, a feat widely imitated but never surpassed, even by the director himself. Once again, thanks for watching, and don't forget to let us know your favorite horror movie in the comment section below.